Hi guys, welcome back to the Dawah response team, where we address specific issues which are brought up when Muslim apologists spin their tales around Islam and how great it is. This time, it's a somewhat sensitive topic, incest. It's a cultural taboo. Let's take a look where Islam weighs in on this, and please appreciate that this is not my opinion, but what the Qur'an says or what Islamic scholars deem to be acceptable today. I am just delivering what is allowed in Islam and the various groups within Islam. Objectively, any sexual act between mature human beings, if it is consensual and without the intent of transmitting diseases and using adequate protection, this should be acceptable in today's day and age. Where we draw the line from a legal view in many countries is like necrophilia, bestiality, or when the sex partners are family members or close relatives, mostly due to possible genetic disorders. But the latter is being reviewed in many instances because most points brought up against same-sex relationships or family ties are purely emotional. Sporadic genetic disorders are possible at any time for any couple and every conception. So I don't think this should automatically be used as an argument for either side. What is outright useless is the statement that it is somehow not natural, or that it is considered something called a sin in some old book. Now, biologically and psychologically, most people have a built-in rejection mechanism, I suppose is the right word, when it comes to sex with a sibling or parent. So in my eyes, I would not condone sexual relationships within the family personally. But from an objective point of view, can't find anything objectionable in this and would not criminalize this. And I am not, and I can't stress this enough, I'm not talking about a father raping his daughter, or any form of abuse for that matter, okay? But now, boundaries become somewhat blurred when a man with a son gets divorced and marries a younger woman. And now here, sex between the stepmother and the stepson does not represent a biological hazard at all, but just goes against social conventions. From a moral point of view, it is completely different, because any sexual relationship between any kind of family members should not be condoned. But just as sexual self-determination restrictions are abolished over time, why should a loving couple of any form be prohibited from anything? So, personally, I'm a bit divided here. But in ancient old books, which were written in connection with gods, this is very different. In these stories, incest is neither abnormal, nor is it the least immoral. The Abrahamic gods decided to make one woman and one man, and they have 2 sons, and the rest must necessarily have been conceived through incest, because in vitro procedures had not been invented yet. And the same is true when these gods fail and require a second try with Noah and his wife this time around. In Islam, the situation is somewhat precarious because it goes a lot further than this. The Quran provides a long list of unsuitable partners for a male Muslim, where the rest must be permissible. And here, cousins, usually excluded as family members, are available as viable, legal, Sharia-conform spouses and sex partners. So while the non-religious society shuns incest, Islam actually condones it and prohibits it. Well, sort of. It's down to interpretation. Because if you get the permission for the man to have sexual relationships with his cousin, the Muslimah is told if she commits zina, in other words, fornication or adultery, with a Mahram, she should be executed in all cases. Now, this concept of Mahram, the chaperone or male relative, can get pretty complicated. Now, theoretically, if a woman wants an excuse to have sex with a man, she could give him her breast to suck on, and this makes him a part of the family. And he can be with this woman even when she is not veiled, or he can accompany her if she wants to go on Hajj, for example. And what happens in Mecca stays in Mecca. So there can be incredibly far-fetched but very practical examples which enable sex between all sorts of people in Islam. And come on, human beings can be very creative when it comes to facilitating sex. Muslim apologists will usually only dish out the clean versions. And it's down to interpretation. Such as, if you go to the Qur'an and in 24:31, it sort of beats around the bush, providing a list of people a female Muslim, a Muslima, can present her ornaments to, without specifying what exactly these ornaments are. Maybe like kneecaps or nipples or nostrils. And there's, of course, sisters, women whom their right husband has, the children who have not attained knowledge. And it's, of course, including slaves and those who don't yet understand. This is quite cute. What is hidden of women? Okay. And as was hinted at before, when talking about sexual relationships directly, the Quran turns to the men and tells men in the chapter called The Women in 4:23, prohibited to you are, and then there's a long list of females that you're not allowed to marry and have sex with. And omitted here are, for example, your grandmothers and cousins. And all else seems to be banned. But fear not, Sharia has an understanding ear for men who stray. Enter the Islamic legal scholars. Now, remember, you can have sex with your slaves and all those female captives. And I mean, this is not touched here. This is only about Muslim family members. So what Islamic legal scholars do, they use 2554. It is he who's created man from water. Then he has established relationships of lineage and marriage, referring to an approved legal marriage. And it's this lineage which is at the bottom of quite weird happenings now. Because experts within Islam who lay the foundation for Sharia over time, like Al-Qurtubi, Ibn Hussein, Al-Shubi, Al-Hassan, Al-Turi, Ahmad, Ishaq, Kamali, and so on, they all approach this in very different ways, as do the madhabs today, the religious regions. Some of them take what I call a sly approach, saying it mentions a combination like sisters, daughters, but without actually saying each time that sex is prohibited with them. You know, there's just a useless list of females within the family. But, okay, it's dishonest, but it seems to work. And then you have the issue that some, like the Shafis, allow, and this is quite weird, the sexual relationship between father and daughter, because she is illegitimate, and thus not his legal lineage, even though she is his physical daughter. Okay, let me explain this quickly, because this is quite strange. And I'm going to use an example based on what Ibn al-Arabi, one of the most influential Islamic scholars, said almost 1,000 years ago. Imagine a Muslim man has sex with a married Muslim woman. She becomes pregnant. Now this does sort of establish extramarital sex, especially if the husband is sterile for some reason. Now, as per Sharia, the man receives his 100 lashes, and the woman is sentenced to be stoned. At age 2, the baby girl is taken away from her mother. The stoning is postponed indefinitely because some countries, not Saudi, Iran, but they do consider stoning to be somewhat unacceptable, and the woman therefore goes to jail, and the child goes into a foster home. Now later, the woman, I mean, she got divorced from her husband, or the husband divorced her, and she then later marries her sex partner, who, when the daughter turns 9, takes her out of the foster home and marries her, because she is not considered his legal lineage, due to her birth out of wedlock. So now he is married to the mother and his own daughter at the same time, and can have sex with them. If he now has a son, his first daughter is not considered his sister, but stepmother, even though both have the same mother and father. I mean, this is weird. And just for the hell of it, while researching all this, can father and son have sex with the same sex slaves in the house? Yep, No prohibition. This is possible and allowed in Islam. Wow. Well, anyway, then let's carry on. The Quran has special treatment for prophets, and incest is suspended. Because in 3350 it says, prophets we have made lawful to thee, blah, 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 blah. And then any believing woman who dedicates her soul to the prophet if the prophet wishes to wed her. So anyone, it doesn't matter who she is, can get married to the prophet and they can have sex. But now, to clarify this is only for prophets, not for the believers at large. And we know we have appointed for them as to their wives and captives and they're still allowed to have sex with their wives and slaves but otherwise prophets get special treatment. So a prophet can have sex with whomever he likes by the look of it, but not regular Muslims. Oh, and one little thing I forgot to mention about the marriage list. The Quran also very clearly allows sex between a man and his wife's daughters on the condition he has not gone in. Isn't that wonderful? But I suppose that's a minor detail. But it is mentioned in the Quran. Another combination clearly permissible is that of a man and his daughter-in-law if she first gets divorced, according to 33:37. And this entire problem is exacerbated by Muhammad marrying his cousin, as does his daughter. So getting rid of all these rules and exceptions leading to incest, this is all but impossible. The result of this is that in a country like Pakistan, most marriages for decades or even centuries are incestuous through cousin marriages. And they deliver horrific congenital malformations or birth defects. And thus babies unfit for life. And not only occasionally, but at a statistically relevant rate. So, why? Because it's difficult, and I understand. And really, my heart goes out to every young Muslim. Because it's difficult for a young Muslim. It doesn't matter whether male or female. It's difficult to mingle and mix and learn about life and relationships in the real world in the 21st century. Islam is too restrictive for that. They can't mix and meet and then experiment and find out what they like and don't and what makes you compatible, what doesn't, what you do in a relationship and what you don't. They can't learn this. So it's easier for them to keep it in the family they see regularly. Or in modern times, what you see a lot is frequently ubiquitous Muslim matchmaker sites. Or, as an alternative, ditch Islam and live as a cultural Muslim. Now, in closing, it's very obvious that conservative Muslims or Muslim apologists today should not jeer, even softly, when they talk about incest in other societies and morality or the lack thereof. And again, this is based not on my emotions, but what is acceptable according to Quran and Islamic texts and what Islamic scholars make of them. I hope this has been informative. Thanks for your time.